Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have on the line, I'm very privileged to say, John Carter Cash. John, you are the son of Johnny Cash and June Carter, two of the biggest names in country music ever. What was it like growing up in that family?
Well, people ask me quite often, what was it like being surrounded by that stardom and being surrounded by all the limelight, for one thing, on stage. My parents were good-natured, humble people, and that's what made it easier, was that no matter what, I knew that they would come back to center and come back to the simple nature, and that they would not be um, larger than life when it came to home life. That they were simple of heart, and so it made it that much easier, to be around them, and it made that much easier to grow up in that environment.
Being a musician yourself and also a singer yourself and a recording artist, you've done a heck of a lot of work in production, both with June and also with Johnny Cash himself, and then moving on to help people like Loretta Lynn. How has it been working with these luminaries?
Well, I grew up around people that, for one reason or another, were on an elevated status in other folks' minds. My parents, were great entertainers and had a wondrous talent, but they were also stars in the public eye. And but I knew them as regular human beings, and I think one reason that I've done so much work in the production world is because I've just been around stars my whole life, and I tend to forget that they're any different from anyone else, and I think some of them like that.
Yeah, no, the American the Third, oh sorry, American Third, Solitary Man,
American
American.
Three, yeah, the solitary.
Those and Man Comes Around, they all received CMA awards. That must have been a great sort of pat on the back for you, thinking, yeah, I've done
Yeah, they
quite.
got CMA. The Man Comes Around got CMA awards and Grammys, and Solitary Man may have gotten CMAs, but it definitely got Grammys and or a Grammy, I think. But still, yeah, it was an honor, and also the two records that I produced of my mother's, The Wildwood Flower and Press On, I co-produced Press On. They both won Grammys also. But accolades are one thing. It's just persistence in work and keeping up a creative endeavor, and no matter what that may be, that's what I always try to do and follow my heart.
Now, as well as working with his parents, you've also worked with Sheryl Crow, Willie Nelson, Elvis Costello, Jewel. There is a real sort of list of diverse music genres in there. How did you find working with people like Elvis Costello, and maybe sort of Vince Gill?
Costello, yeah, yeah. I did a couple things with Vince Gill, in my history of working in music, and Costello. Man, Elvis is a creative force to be reckoned with, and Elvis in his own way. I don't think anybody really produces him. He is a visionary, but he did have some songs on a couple albums that I produced. But yeah, man, I've known Elvis since I was 7, I suppose, or 8 years old. I remember going
Wow.
to Nick Lowe's house. Nick was married to my sister Carlene, and Nick, of course, produced a lot of the Costello records in the 70s and 80s. And I remember going to Nick's house and hearing the band really loud in the basement and going, "Who? Why are they playing at 4 a.m. when I'm trying to sleep?" And later on, realizing that was Elvis Costello and the Attraction.
Wow, fantastic! What a thing to be able to say. Now you've got well, had an album out called The Family Secret,
Hmm.
which really was an amazing album. 2010 it was released, and it was all, I guess, about the family, about your family.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot in there. The song itself, "Family Secret," is a sort of a punk rock song about a family of werewolves. So, but sort of tongue in cheek. But but there's a lot of diversity on the album, and there's one song on there called "No One Gets Out of Here Alive" that's definitely connected into my family heritage. Um, but man, I mean, I always go back to family. I do, and I always try to stay close with my own family now. I have 4 children. I have a 22-year-old son, a 17-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old son, and a 9-month-old daughter.
Oh, wow.
So I'm pretty busy when it comes to family, but I always stay connected with my family heritage. Also, of course, Maybelle Carter from the original Carter family was my grandmother, and she had a lot to do with the creation of country music itself. And then, of course, my father's heritage. I'm proud of all he did in music and who he was as a human being, first of all. And so, I try to stay close to family in many different ways.
Do you find that's difficult when you're out touring?
I find it all part of my life. It's all connected in, and it's all part of a creative endeavor, and it's also, part of my work is to focus on family, and so my family heritage, my parents' heritage and whatnot, and so it all comes back around full circle.
Okay, now you are also an acclaimed author, children's books, as well as a biography of your mum, and The House of Cash, which I've never read, but I'd love to get my hands on a copy of that. The Legacies of My Father, Johnny Cash. Those books must be a real sort of insight into your life and your family's life.
Yeah, yes, definitely so, and a personal insight. The House of Cash book is like a large book with photographs in it, and facsimiles of my father's writings and whatnot, and his love letters to my mother and more personal items. So there's a whole lot in there that is a personal connection of a son's life with his father. And but it was a lot of fun working on those books. But it was also a healing endeavor for me. All that was written after my parents passed away.
Yeah, you children's books that you've written. Daddy loves his little girl, and Mama loves her little son. The Cat and the Rhinestone Suit, should I say? How many of those have been inspired by your own childhood?
Oh yeah. But my mother said to me, "Mama loves her little son," when I was just a little boy, and it sort of stayed with me. And that Mama Loves Her Little Son was the first children's book that I wrote, and did it with an artist named Mark Burkhart. I always loved children's books when I was growing up. So it was a great connection to my own love for literature that led me to write them. But it was also a connection with my own children. I love my time with my children, and I cherish it, and that's what those books are about.
Yeah. Now, you've also got a cookbook, the Cash and Carter Family Cookbook. I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. I think it's amazing that all these recipes apparently are from your family's dinner table. Is that right?
Yes, they are, or they're my own personal creation, or they're recipes that I've modified of my family's. But yeah, I mean, I'm a cook, and I cook a whole lot on a regular basis. I'm a short order cook. I make breakfast for my family every morning, or for my wife or my little girl if we're the only ones that are around. And I just made my 9-month-old breakfast and had it all set up before I came back in to do this interview. So, cooking is something that is a big part of my life, and has been since I was a teenager. But I've always wanted to write a cookbook. And these are recipes of the family, and my mother's and my father's also. He was a cook, and he made a southwestern style American chili. Really hearty with lots of cumin and chili powder in it, and
wow.
So that I'm just following like suit from all that I have ever known.
When you look back on things like that, of maybe getting round the table as a family, was it a very, very strong family environment? With Johnny Cash and your mom and Rosanna and Tara and all the others.
Yes, it was. I mean, my mother and father sort of cherished that time around the table, and it was a gathering, on a daily basis at my mother's table, and she was always formal. I'm less formal than she was, but her table was always set with the finest of linens and china, and it was always a formal event, and so we had a lot of we created a lot of memories around the table, also with some dear friends, that were stars or whatever. We in my cookbook, there are experiences, stories that come from Loretta Lynn and Lisa and Chris Christopherson, John Prine, and from also as far-reaching out as Adam Clayton from U2 actually wrote a story about experience at the table with my parents. It's in the cookbook. So it's a diverse cookbook, but there's also a lot of connections with my family's, close friends that are part of the cookbook. So there's a lot of, a lot that happened at those supper time tables with my mother and father that is connected in with the history through this book.
You sound as though you sort of feel as though you are the preserver of the family's legacy. Is that the way you feel about it?
In some ways, yeah. I try to. I try to, do my best anyway. And it's it's part of my life's endeavor. I mean, it truly is. To let the good be known. Mm. Because I mean, a lot of people from my father's heritage or whatever, they'll focus on just the fact that he's an image of cool, or or the man in black, or
yes,
struggles with his, or whatever, and that's all part of who he was. But there was so much more, and when you start peeling away the layers of the onion, you find a whole lot about Johnny Cash, and that's what I'm trying to relate to people. That's what I'm trying to hope people know just as much as anything. Are my father's loves and his lights, and the fact that he would much have rather worn a rainbow than black. It just wound up that way.
Do you enjoy being out on the road, performing, or would you rather be at home writing?
Oh, I like both. I mean, I do like to perform, but I find myself doing less of it now and working more in the studio and spending more time, in creative endeavors in the studio or writing than I do anything else. And I mean, I'm still working with Loretta Lynn after 11 years working together, I think it is now, that I've been co-producing with her daughter Patsy. And so, it's a lot of fun. Loretta is like family. So that's very important to me. But there's so much more to life, than just the road life. And it's a part of who I am, a part of what I do, but there's a whole lot more.
When you sit down and you decide to write, do you find inspiration comes easily, or are these things where you have to really sort of focus on something and work at it before you get an inspiration?
Well, it sort of depends on what it is, It sort of depends on what it is that I'm working at. I mean, sometimes inspiration comes from a memory or a nostalgia, or perhaps it is a life's creed that I've established, a song that means something to me that's more of a personal statement, or perhaps that it's the love for my wife or my family. I mean, it depends on what it is and as to how the inspiration arises and how it remains and how it comes back, and there's so much to it.
Okay, I know you're very, very busy, and our time is limited. So just a couple more questions, if I may. One of them, when you get into the studio and your production, you're doing the production work on a track. Do you find that you have to give the artist the confidence to let you take over and let you visualize what that track's going to sound like?
I don't ever struggle there. I follow my heart creatively, and it's a we environment, and I'm the author of this work, and we're going to follow my direction. I'm not that kind of producer. I like to create a commingled creative environment in which everyone has a voice that is heard, and I like to surround myself with talented people, and some that and also to realize that their talent specifically on their instrument is greater than mine, and I like to see what the genius performers that I work with, from everybody from Sam Bush to, to Jerry Douglas, to great great players that have been in Nashville for a long time, since the 60s. And I like to appreciate everyone for their own unique talents. And so that's what it's about. It's about being open-minded, and it's about furthering creativity through everyone's endeavors.
Is it true? Last question, because as I say, I know you've got to get on. Last question. The Cash Cabin Studio. Is that where you do? Is it true that that's where you do most of your work, and that is where your father recorded hundreds of songs years ago?
Mm. Yes, he did. He did. That's where he recorded probably about half of American 3 through 6, and all of the vocals for American 5 and 6 were pretty much done in the cabin. So yeah, a lot of music through the years has been done there. But since he's passed away, there have been thousands of recordings even since then. So.
Yeah. How does it feel when you walk in there? Do you feel him still there?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You feel the creativity around you. You do. You feel the energy, the life, the spirit that's still there of my father's music. And there's a photograph of him that was the last portrait that was ever taken of him, taken by Marty Stewart, that hangs over and watches over everything. So you physically also feel my father's presence because he's looking down over you all the time.
Wow, that must be so very, very special. John Carter Cash, I thank you so much for your time. It's been a bit of a trial trying to get this interview together, but I do thank you and your team for all the hard work.
Well, I'm honored to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, and hopefully we'll get to see you one day, maybe in Spain. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your insight.
Good. Thank you, sir. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.